It's the question, isn't it? The one that humanity has obsessed over forever. But beyond all the philosophy and belief, what does science actually have to say about our final moments? So, what really happens in those moments after we take our last breath? We're not going to get into theories or beliefs here. We're talking about the biological reality, the stuff scientists are just now starting to piece together. Let's really dig into this incredible mystery. First thing you have to know, forget the idea that death is like flipping a switch. It's not an instant event at all. It's more like a cascade, a process where your body and your brain go on one last, pretty extraordinary journey. So, our journey into this process starts right at the clinical end of life, that exact moment when the heart stops beating. This one event is the trigger for everything else that's about to happen. This is the first and biggest domino to fall. Once the heart stops pumping, that oxygen-rich blood just stops flowing to the brain. And you gotta remember, the brain is an oxygen hog. It uses about 20% of all the oxygen your body takes in. So it feels this loss, and it feels it fast. So that leads to the obvious question, right? If the brain's fuel is suddenly cut off, does your consciousness just blink out of existence? You'd think so, but the answer, and this is pretty amazing, seems to be a definite no. Instead of just fading to black, the dying brain does something that's, well, it's totally unexpected. It actually lights up in one final, brilliant surge of activity. So for a little while, even after the heart is completely still, the brain isn't just firing off random signals. Nope. It enters this state of super heightened, really organized activity. It's almost like it's giving one last grand farewell. Scientists have a name for this, a gamma wave surge. And what's so wild is that these specific brain waves are linked to really high-level thinking, things like memory recall or deep meditative states. To see them fire up in a dying brain, it suggests this final, really lucid moment of awareness. It's as if the brain is having one last, really profound experience. Okay, so while the brain is having this incredible final surge, the rest of the body has already started its own, much more predictable, shutdown sequence. Let's take a look at how that timeline breaks down. So within just minutes, cells all over the body are starved of oxygen, and we just begin to die. That is the point of no return. Then, over the next few hours, the body starts to cool down and the muscles get stiff. That's what we know as rigor mortis. The whole machinery of life just slowly grinds to a halt. But what about the people who have stood right on the edge of this process and somehow come back? Their stories, these near-death experiences, they give us this fascinating, even if it's subjective, glimpse into what might be happening. What's really stunning is how consistent the stories are. It doesn't matter what your culture is or what you believe, people who've had these near-death experiences, or NDEs, report a lot of the same things. Seeing a bright light, feeling this incredible sense of peace, and often this very distinct feeling of separating from their own body. So how are we supposed to interpret all this? Is it purely a biological response? Maybe that gamma wave surge is the brain just trying to make sense of its own shutdown process, one last vivid dream. Or is it something more? Right now, science is standing at this fascinating crossroads, right where biology meets a huge, profound mystery. And that mystery, well, it brings us to the real heart of the whole thing, because while we can map out the physical shutdown of the body and even track the electrical fireworks in the brain, there's one piece of this puzzle that is still completely out of our reach. Yeah, we can map the brain's activity, but we can't map consciousness itself. We all know it's there, it's what makes you you, but we don't really know what it is. So when the brain stops for good, what happens to the consciousness it was creating? That's probably the single biggest unanswered question in all of science. We tend to think of death as this closed door, a sudden end. But what science is revealing is that it's a process, a final chapter. And honestly, we're just beginning to learn how to read it. So we'll leave you with this. We can trace the heart stopping. We can see that final flare of activity in the brain. We can document the body cooling. But that ultimate question, the one that really gets to the core of what it means to be alive, that's still out there. Where does consciousness go?